Hey guys, it's TechRain here and welcome back to another PC build. Today we'll be building the best $1,200 gaming PC. That is right, I'm looking forward to this PC build because it's going to be an all white build, which is going to be my first time ever doing one. And the second thing about it is we're building it on the wall. So we're doing a wall mounted gaming PC. So I'm looking forward to this. So let's get into our specs. First of all, we got the CPU. We went with the Ryzen 5 9600. This is a $150 CPU we picked up from Micro Center, which is nice. You can find them on Amazon for around $200, but sometimes they do go on sale for $150, so keep your eyes out for one because this is probably the best budget gaming CPU on the market currently. Now for our RAM, we went with DDR5 6000 megahertz from Corsair and their white Vengeance memory, which is really nice. We got this for $92, which will be awesome for our white build. Now for our SSD, we went with the crucial P3 Plus 1TB SSD. This is a fast Gen 4 drive and we got it for $60, which will be more than enough storage for our boot drive. Since the 96X doesn't come with an actual cooler, we bought ourselves here the SE214 cooler from ID Cooling. This will keep our CPU perfectly cool and also match that white theme for our PC build with a little bit of RGB. We got this for $14 for Prime Day, which is nice. For our motherboard, we went with the Gigabyte X870E Aorus Pro Ice motherboard. Now keep in mind, this is a $330 motherboard, and the only reason I picked up this motherboard was because of the fact that the features I needed for PCIe expansion, and on top of it too, I plan to use this PC as a test bench for new PC hardware, and on top of that too, for gaming. So you can actually save up to $200 on this PC build by going with a different motherboard like the actual ASUS B650 Plus motherboard, which you can find around $150. So everything in this video I will have linked down below with some potential ways in saving money or upgrades you can actually do on this PC build. For our power supply, we went with the Corsair 750 watt power supply. This is an all white power supply, even the cable extensions in the self that come with this build. So you don't necessarily need to buy this power supply. The only reason I particularly bought it was to match the white theme, and since this will be outside the case, it'll just come with the cables too, so I'll save a little bit of money on that. But I could have probably just gone with a black power supply and saved around like 20 or 30 bucks. And finally, for a GPU choice, we got here the RTX 5060 in white from MSI, their gaming trio. Now I actually plan to do two different GPUs for this PC build. We're gonna have the 5060 we're gonna test with alongside the 9060 XT Steel Legend in white from ASRock, because I think people who build this PC for $1,000 or $1,200 will decide between these two GPUs. So I thought it'd be appropriate to compare both of them with similar specs from this build so you guys can see which one is particularly better. I think obviously one is better than the other, but you'll have to see when we get to that part with actually the game testing. But I also do plan to do a few more videos with these GPUs, so if you are interested in seeing a full video testing these two GPUs to see which one is the budget king GPU on the market currently, the 9060 or 5060, or seeing which one of these are better for streaming, then definitely get subscribed. But here's the price of all the parts together for our build, so let's get in the build process. So first what we're gonna do is set up our power supply with our wall mount here. Now, keep in mind, I did buy this wall mount thing as a test bench on Amazon for 20 bucks. I will have a link to it down below. And what I did to actually set this on up was prepare it ahead of time, which was a few months ago, so I don't have any footage of it. But you can find some videos on YouTube with it. But if you want to get it onto your wall, all you want to do is the following. You want to first use a stud finder to find an actual stud in your wall. So I already did that here because there's actually a stud here, which you can see goes for this little crevices here. And I put one stub screw for the bottom here and another through the actual top. And so this will support up to 1,000 pounds, which is more than enough for really any PC build. So the actual wall mount is perfectly good for the time being. And the other thing we did do to actually make sure we can fully utilize all the ports on actually this PC build, we'll be using everything on the motherboard end since nothing is going to be connected to a case. So what I got here is the following. I got one USB connection. I got an HDMI out connection that'll go to our monitor. And then on top of that, we got an actual power extension cable extension, which is going to a UPS on my desk over there. So another thing we'll need to do ahead of time is set up our power supply, because this is gonna be the heaviest thing in our PC build. It's gonna be right above our motherboard. So we wanna make sure to plug in the necessary cables, because this is fully modular. We're gonna plug in all the cables that we need and nothing unnecessary. So the only thing we're gonna need for this build is our power cable. We're gonna need one of our 8 pins for our CPU cable. We're gonna need one PCIe cable for the 8 pin, since our GPUs only use 8 pins altogether. We don't need any additional ones. Our 24 pin to power the motherboard in itself, and that's everything we'll need for this PC build. Now keep in mind, I did actually buy a little switch thing that turns on the PC in itself, which I'll show you guys a little bit later here, and I will have that link down below as well if you are interested. So first thing we're gonna do is plug in our 24 pin for later for our motherboard. Then we're just gonna need our CPU cable, which we're gonna plug into our power supply here. And the last cable we'll need is our PCIe cable to power our actual GPU itself. So we're gonna plug this in the bottom as well. Now all we wanna do is take our power supply here, and it's actually got some screws on the bottom that actually match up the line up here for the lip. And then what we're gonna do is line this on up like so with the actual bracket here and screw it on in so it doesn't move anywhere. With that, we got our power supply nicely secured on here. So next thing we're gonna do is prepare our motherboard. So what we're gonna do is open up the little latch here by pushing down this little lever, and by pulling it on upward, we can get access to our slot for our CPU. Now, before we actually install our actual CPU, we wanna make sure to find the triangle on the socket that matches up with the gold triangle on the CPU. So you can see right here, there's a little white triangle on the top side of this socket. So you can see on the top left there's a gold triangle. We want to make sure to line that up with actually the socket in itself. We're going to carefully drop our CPU on in. It'll just fall into place. With that, our CPU is good to go, and all we want to do is push this on down and take the little lever from earlier, push it on down, and the socket thing will pop off. With that, we got our CPU installed. Now next thing we want to do is install RAM. So we're going to open up the 2 and 4 slot here. And now what we want to do is line up the actual tooth here with actually the socket in itself. So there's a little tooth we want to line it on up with so it falls into place. Now once you have it the right way in, all you want to do is push down on it on both sides. Once it pops into place, you're good there. And we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. So we're going to carefully line it on up. Once it falls into place, we want to push it down on each side. With that, we got our RAM perfectly installed. Now the next thing we want to do is actually install our SSD on this top slot here. So there's a little lever on here for the quick release. We're going to push this on to up, and then we're going to push this up and then lift it. With that, we got access to the slot. Now what we're going to do is match the small tooth and big tooth with actually the socket here. So you can see there's a little small tooth and big tooth. We're going to line it on up at a 45-degree angle and wiggle it on in. Once we got that, we can just push it on down. There's a little lever here, right here. You see a little black lever. You want to push this up slightly. Once it clicks into place, we almost have our SSD perfectly installed. What we want to do now, take this little peel, remove this from the thermal pad. Then we want to take this actual tooth here and line it up with actually the tooth from the socket at an angle. Once it slides in, all you want to do is push it down. And with that, we got our SSD installed. Now the next thing we want to do is actually install our cooler. And before we do that, we want to actually make sure you actually take off these little bracket things here. Now, keep in mind, you don't want to lose these because if you do need to return your motherboard, you got to have these with it. And when we actually install the cooler, I would recommend doing it on the actual box in itself because there's a back plate here, which we will need to actually use to actually install the cooler. If it falls off, it's going to be a pain. So having it on the cardboard box will make it so it doesn't fall anywhere. So this shouldn't take us too long to do. We just got to turn it lefty-loosey. Once it comes on, we can leave that to the side. We're gonna do the same thing on the opposite bracket. With that, we got our brackets uninstalled. Now, to install the cooler itself, we'll need a few things. First of all, we're gonna need this little red package here for the AM5 socket. Then we're gonna also need these 2 little brackets we actually have for our cooler. 2 of these things to clip on our fan. So what we wanna do is take these red things and put them right on top of the back plate. So you can see where we took off our actual mounts earlier for the socket. We wanna place them right there. And then the next thing we wanna do is actually get our brackets, and we want to have them going like this. So what I recommend you do next is actually take that bracket and take the longest screw and put it through the top hole early, so that way it makes it easier to screw it on down. Once you have it lined up, all you want to do is start screwing it on down. So we're gonna do the exact same thing with another one of these long screws and put it on the opposite side here. Once it's nicely tightened, we just want to do the exact same thing on the opposite side. Now that we got our brackets nicely installed, what we want to do is get ready to install our cooler. So next thing we're gonna do is apply some thermal paste to our CPU. Usually I do a size of a grain on top of it, so that's what we're gonna do here. What we want to do is actually take these actual teeth right here that go match them up with actually little parts that are right there. So we need to first remove this actual peel here, because if we don't remove this peel, it can actually cause some thermal problems with your CPU, and we do not want that. Then you just carefully line it on up. Then you start turning it onto the actual socket and tightening on down. So we're nicely and evenly tighten this on down. Then once it's nicely tightened on both sides, your cooler is nicely installed. So what we want to do with the solar fan is take those clips from earlier, we have 2 of these, and we're going to fish hook it through the actual holes. So you can see there's a hole here, hole there, and we're going to fish it on through. Once you fish it on through on both sides, so what we're going to do is fish hook it, like I said earlier, make sure it's even. Once you have it hooked on one side, you're just going to do the opposite sides. With that, our fan's installed, and we just need to plug in the 2 cables. So one of these is a fan cable, which there's a fan header right here. This is a CPU fan. We're gonna plug it right in there. And take this ARGB connection. We actually come with the actual CPU cooler fan. We're gonna plug it into this one where it says DV. With that, we got our cooler nicely installed with the cables. So the next thing we need to do is actually install the actual motherboard with everything already installed into the actual wall mount here. So it's gonna be kind of hard because this is a heavy motherboard and everything's already pre-installed, so it just makes it easy to get it on the first time, and hopefully we won't have to move it the second time. So I just got it on in there, we're all good to go. I had to get a second pair of hands because honestly, I would recommend make sure you start to install the motherboard on the actual test bench before you hang it up on the wall, because it's a bit hard to actually do it with like one pair of hands, so I had to get a second person. So what we're gonna do now is actually take our GPU for the 5060, plug it on in, and plug in our power cables. So what we're gonna do is take our bracket here, line it on up with the 2 and 3 slot. And since it's got that easy latch, it makes it easier for me to install GPUs and uninstall them. With that, our GPU is good. I just need to screw it on down so it doesn't fall, because if it falls, that would really suck. So the next thing we're gonna need to do is set up our cables for our power supply. So you can see I got the 8-pin in for the CPU since it's the hardest one to do. We're gonna do a 24-pin now. I plan to get some cable ties later for the actual cables, because there's actually a lot of like extra slack and I didn't give anything for it. So you think I pay $120 for the actual, for the $120 for the power supply, they get some nice cable clips, but you know, they did not get anything. That's in. So I'm not gonna lie, the clip ties are gonna be very nice to take it for the cables later here, because this is kind of jank for the time being, but just to make sure it works, we'll plug it in like this. So what we need to do is power on our power supply with the rest of the build. Next we're gonna do is plug in the cables into the back IO of the motherboard. So we're gonna plug in our USB cable. This will go to our USB switch on my desk, so I can click switch input 4. This will allow me to connect to the PC on the wall, which would be awesome. HDMI cable is gonna be an HDMI out, so we're gonna plug that into our GPU. And then finally, we got our Ethernet cable, which will allow us to get internet. And of course, I do have access to Wi-Fi too, but I primarily use it for Bluetooth. And then I got a lane in and lane out mic. So this will allow me, the mic one will go to my mic, so I can get input, and then a lane out for actually my mixer. That will go to my headset. And if we actually want to power a PC, we can actually put the power button on the top here, or that's on the motherboard. We can actually set this. I have this little button thing I got off Amazon that just like turns on the power switch for it. And now what should happen, since we actually have that plugged in, we should be able to power it on via this little button switch back here I got. So moment of truth, will this thing work? Let's turn it on. It should turn on that monitor. Here we go. So the PC turned out absolutely amazing. I love how this thing looks, especially with the cable management now compared to earlier, which was a mess. This looks significantly better. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set up Windows and XMP, and we're gonna get into the gaming test. So next up, we got Fortnite performance mode. We should get the most FPS possible out of this GPU. If the draw distance to be far, but I'm gonna set the epic, and I'm set the textures low with the mesh. Hey, here we go. Wow, we're getting like 1000 FPS in the battle bus. That's actually kind of hilarious. Whoa. Okay, we're definitely getting more than the FPS I thought we'd get. Like we're almost in the thousands, which is actually kind of insane. That is ridiculous. Like how did Pro get inside so fast? Oh, you're not Pro. I don't know who you are, but okay. This FPS though feels insane, like 400 FPS in Fortnite. I just whooped every single shot in existence. There we go, I got him. Okay, I'm about to say, no shot I whipped that. Oh, that's a bolty. No shot you hit. What am I looking at? Is he like droning? Like, I'm very much confused on what he's doing. I don't know what I want to do. Oh my god, that's actually insane. I don't know how I lit that. Is he above me? I hear this? Okay, yeah, I hear it. No shot, dude! We have everything on high settings for the time being using DirectX 12. Mounting FPS, we're getting those pretty consistent though, over 100 FPS. The game feels good, looks really nice too. Of course, my sense is absolutely balls to the walls right now because I have not fixed the sensitivity at all. That's legit the pop is the worst possible time to fall down, something like that. Nice, nice. Love to see it. This is not what I wanted to do. I tried. I couldn't do anything right there. Yeah, shotgun. I was in a really bad spot. Whatever. So what we're gonna do now is switch out the RTX 5060 with the RX 9060 XT 16GB model. Now, I do want to quickly mention, I'm gonna have a different video coming out, 2 different videos at that. That'll be a CPU GPU combo videos. That'll be testing the RX 9060 XT with actually the 96X, that CPU GPU combo, as well as a different video on top of that. There'll be the 96X with the RTX 5060 and multiple different games because I don't want to cover every single game in this one video because that'd be like a 50-long-minute video, and I don't think that's worth covering in all one video. So next we're testing Fortnite on performance mode to get the most FPS possible, see how it does. Fortnite, let's go 700 plus FPS in the battle bus. Now, that's not crazy in all fairness. Like, we had the 5060 8 gig and it had like almost near 1000 FPS in the battle bus consistently. So seeing it being not as high is kind of like surprising. But then again, I will quickly say this thing has like double the amount of VRAM. So like long term, if you plan to play 1440p, you'll see a lot more value out of that. Dude, I got out there. Okay, the next thing we're gonna do is Fortnite DirectX 12, all high seg, to see how this actually does. I'm kind of curious to see how it goes. Okay, right on the battle bus, near 200 FPS, and one low is gonna be 180 or something like that. I did not land on gun. Lovely. Okay, so while we're touching the ground, we're around over 160. Looks like our high is 180, which is awesome. We love to see it. What happened to the bro? Did bro just get sniped by somebody else? Or you DC? No, we did not DC. I'm like over here. Ooh, you a doink, boy! I was like, "Bet I'm out." Part of pocket riff. I knew he was gonna lose that. Oh, I wanna hunt that kid who Oh. Oh. Oh, that's too good. Oh, hello. That's okay. I didn't realize the bush was still in the game. Yeah, I was thinking that bush looks awfully sus, and then I was just dead. So let's go with my final thoughts now on this $1,200 wall-mounted gaming PC. So the first thing I want to talk about is would I recommend building this PC? Probably not, but actually at the same time I would recommend building it. And the only reason I'm recommending not to build it is because what I did personally with this build was spend too much money on the actual motherboard. So I could have probably saved $200 for going with a B650 board like the one we talked about earlier. The Asus Prime B650 board, which is $160, instead of spending $330. Now the only reason I did that, as I said earlier, is I plan to use this PC for game testing and also for testing new PC hardware, and I think I'm actually gonna love it. Like, would I recommend building this PC? Absolutely. If you want to build a wall-mounted version of this PC, go for it. Save yourself some money on the motherboard, and you can spend it on the rest of your hardware and get maybe 2 terabytes of storage instead of 1 terabyte storage like I did here. Because that's what I would have personally have done if I was planning to like not use this for game test benching. I would put it like other things. But the other thing with it is too, is that the GPU situation is interesting. So both the 9060 XT, which we got here from ASRock, and also the 5060 are the exact same price. Now, which one would I recommend for anyone out there who's looking to build their first new PC on a budget? I would personally recommend using the 9060 XT just because that 16 gigabytes of VRAM really showed what I could do in this actual game testing here. Because when we played 1080p high settings on Fortnite, we were averaging around 30 to 40 more FPS compared to the RTX 5060. Now, it was interesting though, we weren't getting more FPS on actually lower settings, even though I thought that might be the case, because supposedly AMD with the CPU and GPU combo is very good, but maybe I didn't have resizable bar enabled, so that could possibly it. But honestly, I don't really want to even include that in my testing. If I had to go in the BIOS to actually enable that, it was good. It was 1080p on performance settings, was all right for actually it. But the 5060 I felt like definitely took the cake when it came to getting the most possible FPS at the lowest resolution quality possible for competitive settings. Like, I was so quite surprised on the FPS results. Like, it almost hit 1,000 in the battle bus. Compared to the 9060, it was like 300 to 400 off at times, which is kind of insane to think about. And it was also consistently hitting 450 FPS with the 5060. So yeah, I feel like if you're going to play higher resolutions, higher monitor frequencies, definitely go with actually the, 9060 XT 16 gigabyte. But if you do plan to get as much FPS as possible, maybe the 5060 is not a bad option. I wouldn't really recommend it, but surprisingly did way better than I thought it originally was going to do with my original testing. Because my original testing used like a Ryzen 9 39X, and of course it did not do good. So I'm going to see with the new driver and on this PC with an AM5 CPU like I thought it would do, it did significantly better, because comparing it to using an AM4 CPU just really showed AM4's aging off. But overall, this PC turned out absolutely amazing. I personally love how it looks, and I would definitely recommend building this PC as well if you can build it for the price point of $1,000. You don't even have to do a wall mounted design. You can literally put the money you got from saving on the motherboard or some other part and put it in getting a PC case like the Monitech XR, which it can house every single PC part we use in this build. But if you want to get some cool points and showing off to your friends, maybe the wall mount isn't a bad idea. It's $20 and you just get some stud screws and find a stud, you're chilling. But if you guys enjoyed my PC build video, then you know what to do. Make sure to smash the like button, get subscribed to some future tech content. I'll see you for one. Tech Rant out.